In those days, the crest was in service to the shade, protectors of Heartvale. Our lieutenant has been returned to us. Though some may call her mad, I have known her long enough to see that what she carries is not madness, but perspective. I cannot guess at the dark depths she has plumbed, or arcane secrets she has unearthed. What I can say is that when facing dangerous artifacts of a dead god of decay and corruption, I sleep better knowing she is with us. Preparations are well underway for our departure, but we still have a few days before boarding a drift ship that will take us to Davenar. I am eager to see this city that is a rival to Heartvale. In my travels, I have seen many rival cities, and often they are more similar than they choose to admit. As we draw closer to our departure, those who have been chosen to go are making their own preparations. As often happens with mercenaries, some of our number have taken lovers in the city, and there are farewells to be said. Many of our new recruits are native to this city, and may wish to say their own farewells to friends and family. Those of us who have served the crest know this dance. We are always destined to wander. The days grow shorter. Soon we will be off. Soon the Vidala will be under our blades. Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures. As always, I'm your game master and solo player, Steve Morrison. On this week's episode, our Crest soldiers take a breather and have a quiet moment before their next adventure kicks off. Find out what happens on episode 37, The Queen of Blossoms. Last time, Ben, Arid, and Orchid managed to return from Mother Tumor's apothecary back to the Crow's Nest with a curative fueled by Arid's true name. They were able to deliver this curative to Lephalia, the chief sorceress of the Crest, who, after interacting with an artifact of Vargosh, her spirit became absent from her body, and Arid was unable to return her spirit through normal means. He took this curative and enacted this ritual to help Lephalia, and in so doing, he found her in a place far, far away. A world of darkness that had 3 full moons standing in the sky. He walked through this dark forest until he came to a clearing where he found Lephalia. But not Lephalia like he had come to know her in the Crest. Lephalia, the beautiful human woman who, even though she has been with the Crest for a long time, barely looks older than 20. No, instead he found a dark fae with pale skin and angular features and long tapered ears and eyes that are dark as night. He speaks to her and tries to convince her to come back. And at first she doesn't recognize him, but then her memory of him returns and she realizes that she must accompany him back to the mortal world, back to the crow's nest, because there was still work that needed to be done. And so they return. And the lieutenant wakes up to find that Captain Netheridge has arrived in the room and has been observing this ritual. And he has work for them to do. We also got to see a scene of Linford, a sergeant in the Fell Swords, who had a meeting with a Kingsword operative by the name of Mortar. And they talked a little bit about the state of affairs at the Royal Dispatch Company. Mortar confessed that he was concerned with the way that things were going in the Royal Dispatch Company, and he asked Linford, an old naval friend, to loan him some fell swords that he could trust in order to suss out what has been going on inside the Royal Dispatch Company. As we rejoin the members of the Crest in the crow's nest, Ben is sitting in the common room. He is, I think, looking around as the bustle that he saw in this place has died down a little bit, as it's now later in the evening. Many of the Crest who were bustling around the crow's nest when he and Arid and Orchid arrived earlier in the day have left to either go to their quarters or to find another place to drink and carouse. He is looking into his mug, and I think he isn't aware of the fact that Orchid is leaning up against the bar, watching him. He's not aware of this fact until Orchid makes their way over and settles down at the table with him. Orchid says, "I hear it's better if you drink it rather than just staring at it." Ben looks up at them and offers a faint smile and says, "Yes, I suppose that is true. I was just thinking about all the things we've seen and done. Thinking about the dangers that we have faced and may yet face. And the fact that we failed to save Silas. We failed to bring him home. We couldn't even bring a body to return to the scriptorium. Who knows what those Kingswood will do with his body? Probably just leave him there to be eaten by wild animals. It's not fair, Orchid." Orchid pulls a deck of cards out of their pocket and begins shuffling them and starts dealing out a hand. As they do so, they say, "You're right. It's not fair. It's not fair that they captured us. It's not fair that we lost a decent amount of time to that. It's not fair that those spiders were corrupted in that ruin, and that they latched on to Silas and that he didn't make it out, but we did. Life isn't fair, Ben. I know you know that. I know I don't have to tell you that. But maybe just this once you need to hear it from someone else." Ben nods and looks into his mug again. Orchid, picks up the hand and starts looking at the card and says, "Are you going to play with me or not?" Ben nods and grabs the handful of cards that Orchid dealt across the table to him and looks at them. He frowns. Orchid, eyeing him, says, "Is there something wrong with the hand you've been dealt?" Ben chuckles and says, "Maybe, though I think I've dealt my own hand sometimes. I've chosen this path that I'm on. I could have chosen a different one, as we all could have. Right? As Silas could have. He knew the dangers when he came with us, that's why he brought us. But there's no guarantee in life that we're going to come back alive. Anytime we step out that door, Ben, could be the last time. Anytime we sit down to have a drink here, could be the last time. I know you were here when the Fell Swords attacked. I know you were almost killed as well. That's life. And if you don't like it, well, there are ways out." Ben looks across the table and says, "Yes, I suppose there are. That's not what I want. I just want purpose. I think that's what I want. I want a sense of purpose to my life. I want to be something more than just a son of Heartvale. Just another cog in the machine that is my family. I know I don't talk about them much. I've told you the story about my sister. But my family has power in the city. They are well known. I could have come home and had a place in the family business, or a posting at the Vixilio War College. Anything I wanted, but I was afraid. I was afraid of becoming like my sister. A villain. Or a scapegoat. I'm not really sure. And so I joined the Crest, and yet here I am sitting at this table wondering if I'm a villain. Or a scapegoat. Orchid places a card face up on the table, fishes out a small silver coin and places it next to the card. They say, "Knight of Corners." Ben looks at the card, then back to his hand, and places down a card of his own, the Trident. Orchid smiles, draws a card for themselves, and then draws a card and tosses it across the table to Ben. Then they say, "Ben, talking about feeling like a villain or a scapegoat, sounds to me like you're regretting living this mercenary life, but I don't think that's true. If you were really regretting it, you wouldn't be sitting here. You'd have walked out that door and gone home. You'd have gone home and gotten your parents to get you out of your contract here. At least, that's what you'd have tried, if you really believed that you didn't belong here. So what are you really worrying about? Because people die. Every day people die. Sometimes we can prevent it. Sometimes we cause it. I'm sorry about Silas. It makes me sad as well. I liked the scholar. I wanted him to survive. But he didn't. We did. It's time to move on. So again, what are you really fretting about? Ben says, "When I leave Heartvale behind, there isn't much that I'm leaving behind. I didn't come home with much. And I certainly haven't tried to reform any of my familial relationships since I've returned. But there is one relationship that I have gone back to. My friend, Merrick, the brewer. He and I were at the scriptorium together. I always admired him, his conviction on what was good and right. And now I've done a thing I hoped to never do. And I used my friend. I used my friend for the crest's betterment. And in so doing, I think I lost my friend. I think he looks at me now and he sees me for what I am, a mercenary. And I think it breaks his heart. And knowing that breaks my heart. Because I feel like he's the last piece of me that isn't wholly devoted to the crest. I don't want to be dramatic, but here we are. I feel like he may be the last piece of my soul that I haven't sold for glory or coin. And I've lost him. I've lost that friendship, and rightly so. I don't deserve that friendship anymore. Orchid lays another card down. This one depicting a black raven with wings spread wide. And then they look across at Ben and say, Ben, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but do you know that you've lost your friend? Or was your friend just angry at you? Maybe you just need to go talk to him. Maybe you need to make things right. Maybe you can't make things right. But if you're really worried about it, if you really want to make it right, then you gotta go talk to him, rather than sitting here, pining after a nail. Ben places another card and looks up and says, Orchid, you're incredibly wise for a person of your intimidating visage. To which Orchid laughs. They stop laughing when Ben places the Queen of Blossoms. And Orchid says, I see you're making a game of it. All right. And they continue playing until all the cards have been laid down. And it may be a trivial thing, but who wins? 1 to 3, Orchid. 4 to 6, Ben. A 2. Orchid lays their last card and then smiles and says, looks like you owe me some coin. Ben nods. Pushes the coins that have stacked up next to the cards across the table. And then says, you have won the game, Orchid, and I applaud you for that. But more so, thank you for our conversation. It's good to know that I have friends here in the crest who will tell me what I need to hear when I need to hear it. Orchid nods and says, you know, I'm not just good with an axe. And then laughs again. And Ben laughs as well and then says, if it's not too late, I think maybe I'll try to get over to Merrick's and see if he's still around. See if I can't have that conversation. Orchid nods and says, good luck. I hope your friend listens. And I hope you listen too. And then Orchid turns back to the bar and gets up to get another drink. In a small laboratory in the back of the crow's nest, Lephalia, chief sorceress of the crest, leans over a table looking at the claw of Vargosh that Ben, Arid, and Orchid recovered from the Elfheim ruin. Arid is also standing in the room, arms folded. He watches as the lieutenant waves her hands over it and chants. And then finally she finishes and she turns and looks at him and says, "You did well, binding the curse of this artifact away. I'm very impressed with your work, Arid. You have shown yourself to be a formidable talent." "That is very kind of you, Lieutenant. It is only with your instruction that I have grown in power." Lephalia laughs. "Yes, with my instruction. You should know better, Arid, than to flatter me. It doesn't work. No, I know that you have been forced into some dangerous situations, and I have always believed that it is through the crucible of life, that we grow in power. Now tell me, what do you think of our artifact collection?" Arid shakes his head and says, "They are very dangerous artifacts. I do not understand how a dead god could leave behind things of such power. We have come across artifacts before, artifacts that belonged to dead gods, and they were inert, broken, useless, relics of the past, and yet these are not broken or powerless. They are very dangerous." "Yes, they are dangerous. And what does that lead you to believe?" Arid thinks for only a moment, because he has been thinking about this for a long time. And then he says, "Perhaps this dead god is not so dead after all. Perhaps. Or perhaps what this represents is a well of power that was channeled through this Vargosh, and that well remains out there somewhere, waiting to be tapped into, not by this dead god, but by someone else." "You think that is what the Vedala are searching for? This well of power?" "I don't know yet." And for a moment, Lephalia seems troubled with that statement. And then she shrugs and says, "But I think we are going to find out very soon. Very soon indeed. But for the meantime, we must decide what to do with these artifacts." "What did you do with the first artifact?" "I did what the contract demanded, and after a time of studying it, turned it over to the Shade. I hear that the Red Fox has a delicious hidden vault somewhere, where she keeps all of her powerful trinkets and magics. Oh, what I wouldn't give to be able to take a peek into such a vault. Are we going to give her these artifacts? Lephalia considers this for a moment and then says, I think we will have to give her this orb. After all, she sent a mage to clean up our mess. But this claw is unknown to her. And perhaps it can be of use to us. Arid thinks about that for a moment. Thinks about all of the things that he has seen in relation to these artifacts. The whispers, the aura of corruption, the temptation to give into and possess these artifacts. Does he think it's a good idea to keep the Claw of Vargosh? I don't know, so let's ask the fate chart. I think it is very unlikely that he thinks it's a good idea to keep it. And we're going to keep the same chaos factor of 7. 1, which is an extreme yes. So, yes, he does think it's dangerous. In fact, he thinks it's incredibly dangerous to keep it. So he needs to persuade Lephalia that they shouldn't be holding on to any of the artifacts. This is going to be persuade with leverage. When you try to convince someone to do or say something for you by using something you have against them or offering to give them what they want. Roll plus wily. Does Arid have something that Lephalia wants? Or something that he can use as leverage to convince her to let go of the artifact? Because she outranks him. She's the chief sorceress. She's the lieutenant of the crest. If she decides to keep the artifact, there's not really anything he can do about it. But I think he doesn't want to keep it. He wants to pass it on, have it hidden away somewhere. So I'm going to do an honor move. I'm going to spend a point of honor. I'm going to use Do You Know Who I Am? Spend 1 honor to have someone you meet have recently heard something impressive about you. I think, obviously, Lephalia knows who he is. But I think what we're using this for here is Arid is making the argument that he is the one who has recovered 2 out of the 3 artifacts of Vargosh that they have dealt with. And the 3rd artifact sent Lephalia on a walkabout through the astral planes, which Arid had to bring her back from. So I think he's trying to basically use his experience and his perspective to try and convince her to give it up. And I think tied in with that is a little bit of this, I don't want to say it's a threat, because I don't think it's a threat per se, but a little bit of an intimation that he could bring this information to the captain, especially what he saw walking the Sea of Stars and visiting Midnight and discovering what Lephalia really is. And he knows that she has his true name, which she could use against him, but not before he passes all this information off to the captain. And the captain would then be looped into this decision and might actually decide on Arid's side. So I think that's what that's how I'm gonna approach this. Use something you have against them for persuade with leverage. So we're gonna roll plus wily, which is 0 for Arid. He's not very good at the politicking, but because I spent that point of honor, I get plus 1 on this roll. Here we go. 2d6 plus 1. 4 on the dice plus 1 is a 5. So that is a miss. And we should go ahead and roll on our move table here. 27. Back them into a corner, literally or figuratively. Okay, so I think here's how this goes. Arid says, Lieutenant, I do not think this is a good idea to keep any of the artifacts. They are very dangerous, and as the mage that has recovered 2 of the 3 of them, and that third one required some delicate handling, I suggest we give them over to the shade wholeheartedly. Take them away from influencing any of us and potentially creating danger down the road. We are, after all, pursuing these cultists of Vargosh, and it would be a shame if the artifact were to fall into their hands because we had it with us. I would rather it be locked away in a vault than be on the loose. Lephalia looks at Arid, and instantly he sees the flash of anger in her eyes. And she marches straight up to him and drives him back a few steps. The fireplace is crackling right behind him, and she looks up into his eyes and says, "Listen to me carefully. You may have been the mage who stole the artifact from the Defara estate. You may be the mage who recovered this claw. But I am the chief sorceress in the crest. I am the one who decides what we do with magical artifacts. I am the one who defends the crest from magical attacks. I'm the one who stopped the detonation of that artifact from killing myself, Iron Gull, and Kine and Hadron. I'm the one that kept it from spreading further." Arid, feeling the heat against his back, says, "Yes, I understand. You are the chief sorceress, and I do not make any argument of that. I was simply offering my suggestion." "Your suggestion is noted, Arid. We will not speak of this again, and if we do, it will come at a great personal cost to you. Am I understood, Arid?" Arid nods, bows his head, and says, "I understand. I apologize for overstepping." "Yes, well, see that it doesn't happen again. Now leave me. I have much to do." And Arid makes for the door, opens it, pauses for a moment as if he's going to say something else, and then walks out. So looking at our threads, we have given the curative to Lephalia, so that thread is gone. So now we just have 3, which are travel to Davenar, confront the Vidala family, uncover Ephraim Fellhart's connection, if any, with the Vidala, and then restore relationship with Merrick. And that is what Ben is going to attempt right now. So we are going to set a new scene. I am going to, I think, drop the chaos factor down to 6 again. And this new scene is going to be visit Merrick's brewery. And we're going to roll. our D10, compare it against our chaos factor of 6, and see how this scene plays out. A 1, so that is underneath the chaos factor and is going to be an altered scene. So what is the next logical scene? I guess we can ask the fate chart if the brewery / tap room is open. And if it's not open, then there must be a reason why it's not open. So yeah, let's ask, is Merrick's Brewery open? And I'm going to say it is 50-50, chaos factor of 6. 30 is a yes. So yes, it's open. Oh, you know what? I think I know what the alteration is. It is early to mid-evening. So it's not super late yet, but it's also not, like right after work. And Ben walks into Merrick's Brewery. And it's bustling here, and Ben kind of looks around. It has not been this active in the times that he has visited before. And as he walks in the brewery, he hears Merrick's booming voice on the far side. And it's like, "Yes, everyone, thank you so much for coming. We are so pleased to announce this merger of my own brewery with that of my friend Percival. Yes, together we are going to brew Hartvale's finest beer." And the assembled people cheer, and Ben looks across the room and sees Merrick standing right next to Percival, the brewer whose beer Ben ruined in order to get Merrick hired on as the beer provider for the Defara party. Ben pales as he sees Percival. He certainly interacted with the brewer, both talking to him and posing as a representative of the Vixilio War College and the Drift, like trying to buy beer from him for some sort of like summit. But he also fought Percival after he was discovered breaking in and destroying the beer. And so I think Ben sees the two of them together and has to make a decision. Is he going to try and like stick around and talk to Merrick? Or does he take this as a final nail in the coffin in his relationship with Merrick and walk out? Because I think he knows at this point that he's going to have to explain, if he meets Percival, who he is and why he isn't what he said he was. And, Merrick knows, even though he didn't know right away, but like he knows that Ben poisoned the beer. And though it seems like it has created some sort of partnership between the two of them, I don't know that Merrick is going to be all that pleased to see Ben, considering he has this new business partner and he doesn't want to have to explain to his new business partner that, hey, the reason I got all that money from that estate is because this other friend of mine over here ruined your livelihood. So this is a sticky situation and very sad for Ben, because I think he is going to just turn around and leave. And I'm going to ask the fate chart, but I think it is very likely that he turns around and walks out. And it's a chaos rank of 7. 50 is the result, and on very likely, that is a yes. So Ben sees this party going on. He hears the announcement from Merrick as he walks in and sees Merrick and Percival sort of like talking and drinking, and people are coming up to them, and I think Ben has this very sad moment where he's like, All right. I guess that's it then. And he turns around to leave. Now, because, well, let's pour some water on the grease fire here. Does Merrick catch sight of Ben before he walks out the door? I think there's no way that he sees Ben. I think he is distracted enough. But as we've learned with the fate chart, no way doesn't mean that there is no way. So chaos rank of 7. 60, which is a no. So no, Merrick does not spot Ben as he is turning around to leave. And so Ben sort of like takes one final look and then steps out the door and leaves the tavern behind. And I think I'm going to mark off that thread because the thread was restore relationship with Merrick. And I feel like in Ben's mind, that is no longer possible. So he is going to start making his way back towards his apartment, basically, to sleep the night away. And we're going to end the scene there. I think the chaos factor has to go back up because that was definitely not in Ben's control. So he is going to return to his apartment. So we're going to set up that scene and we'll roll a d10 again. A 3, another altered scene. Next logical scene setup of return to the apartment is when he gets back to the apartment, there's someone waiting for him. So he walks up the small flight of stairs into his small apartment. He opens the door and steps inside, glancing quickly around. It's very, very small and dark in here. Almost immediately, he gets the sense that there is a presence in this room. And I think he closes the door behind him, and immediately his hand goes to his sword. And he slowly draws it out, the metal whispering against the leather. I think he is kind of waiting for his eyes to adjust when he hears a familiar voice say, "You can put that away, you know." And he hears a coin flip up into the air, and then a candle on the small table in his apartment ignites. Sitting across this small apartment is Erdira. She's kind of leaning back in a chair, very casually looking up at him, and she says, "So you're back in the city now?" Ben kind of like sighs a little bit and sheathes his sword and says, "Erdira, I thought you were here to kill me." "Why would I be here to kill you, Ben?" And Ben chuckles and says, "Well, not you specifically, but someone was here to kill me." Erdira smiles and says, "Did you kill some more noblemen who were possessed by some sort of strange spirit?" "Not that I'm aware of." Well, I would think that that would be something you'd be aware of. So I think you're okay. Ben says, "I certainly hope so. What brings you to my lovely little abode?" What does bring her to the abode? Let's roll action subject. 67. Open. And 7. Open allies. So the shade and the crest are allies. So maybe it's like an openness between allies or something like that. So does she have some piece of information to convey to him Let's ask the fate chart. I think it's very likely. 48 is a yes. She has some piece of information to share with him. I mean, it's got to be about our threads. So it's either about the Vidala family in Davenar or Ephraim Fellheart's connection. So I think we've done enough Vidala stuff of late. So let's figure out what information she has about Ephraim Fellheart's connection with the Vidala. So again, let's roll action and subject. 41, expose, it's a good start. And 94, expose elements, or an exposure of elements. So Ephraim Fellheart is missing. And he went missing after an attempted assassination of a bunch of Shade operatives. I think Erdira was probably one of the Shade operatives who was observing the Royal Dispatch Company, and maybe she was almost caught in that strike. But maybe she saw something else. Maybe she has a lead on where Ephraim Fellheart went. But if that's the case, why wouldn't she go to the Shade themselves? Why wouldn't she go to the Red Fox? I don't think the Red Fox is somehow secretly involved with Ephraim Fellheart and is actually a villain. But maybe we should ask the fate chart about that. So I think it's impossible that it has to do with the Red Fox directly. 76 is a no. Okay, so the Red Fox is not involved in whatever this is. But because the Shade are a political entity as much as anything else, because of the Red Fox's position on the Council of 12, there's got to be a reason why Erdira is coming to Ben with this information rather than using her own Shade resources. So I think there are two options here. One, there is a member of the Shade who outranks Erdira, who is somehow involved, and she's afraid of going to the Red Fox and not being believed on the loyalty of this Shade. Or it is a member of the Council of 12, and she is leery about putting her aunt in harm's way, if you will, politically, by involving another member of the Council of 12. I think there's no way that there's a Shade who is on Ephraim Fellheart's payroll. But let's find out. 58 is a no. So there's not a dirty mole inside of the Shade. So it is a member of the Council of 12. So again, Ben asks her, why she has dropped in on him in his apartment. And Erdira looks at him and says, well, Ben, I helped you out of a sticky situation. And now I would like your help getting myself out of a potentially difficult situation. Ben says, all right, how can I help? She smiles and says, well, you can help me expose a member of the Council of 12 who has been in league with Ephraim Fellheart and is currently hiding him in their estate. Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures, and thank you so much to Syrinscape for the lovely ambient sounds and music throughout the episode. If you enjoyed the show, please tell anyone and everyone in your life about it. And if you want to support the show directly, leave me a review or buy me a coffee at coffee.com/errantadventures. That's ko-fi.com/errantadventures. If you want to interact with me, my handle on Instagram and Twitter is @errantsolopod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.